leadership show that focuses on excellence, doing things the right way, no shortcuts, and accountability. I'm your host, McNeil, and today our special guest is Shawnta Hooks. Shawnta is a dynamic leader who talks about how her journey led her to her life's purpose as a mindfulness expert. Enough said, let's get to it. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the show called My Great Aunt EDNA, the leadership show that focuses on excellence, doing things the right way, no shortcuts, and accountability. I'm your host, McNeil, and today we have a very special guest, Ms. Shawnta Hooks. Shawnta Hooks is a keynote speaker and CEO of Mindful Culture Creators. MCC's mission is to reduce world distractions by bringing innovative, culturally connected mindfulness programs to people of color, women, and other undeserved communities. Join the movement. And with that, I'll introduce you all to Shawnta Hooks. Shawnta, how are you doing today?
I am wonderful. So excited to be here, and thank you for having me here today.
Yeah, thank you for joining. Really excited. Of course, you and I go back a little ways, so I know a little bit about you, but you've taken on some new things now that I'm really excited about. And I want you to be able to tell the audience a little bit about what you're working on currently.
Yeah. I guess I'll tell you a little bit about this interesting journey that I've been on, for the last 4 years. So I teach mindfulness and meditation, and I also speak about mindfulness and meditation. But like most people that are speakers, that's not something that you typically just go to school to be a speaker. So my story is that I actually started my career in accounting. I'm a CPA and started my career working in public accounting with PricewaterhouseCoopers and did that for a few years and then went into internal audit and other disciplines of risk management and compliance and governance. I say all that to say I sort of had a very logical way of being and thinking, and mindfulness and meditation did not fit into that, sort of bucket for me. So up until about maybe 4 or 5 years ago, I was really a non-believer. I was not a
Okay.
practitioner. I didn't understand it. I have a brother, a younger brother, who is very mindful, and I think he came out the womb meditating. He is a music producer by trade, so he gravitated towards, more esoteric types of thinking and being. And he would talk to me about it. And my father was a meditator, but I didn't buy into it until, life just started to get difficult. And my story around difficulty, part of it was becoming a new mom. I have a
Hmm.
5-year-old son, and around the time that I had my son, I was really looking for something other than traditional therapy and, just to kind of help me out through life. And then I got this new job, that was just a challenge, unlike any challenge I had ever had before. I was promoted into VP of Transformation, and my job was to actually identify and implement automation solutions using robotic process automation and other machine learning AI technology. And to be a Black woman serving in that space was not free from challenge. A lot of resistance, first and foremost, to the idea of automation, right?
Right,
It's a
right.
topic that causes fear and anxiety amongst those being impacted. And in addition to that, this was the first time in my entire 20-year career that I had ever been the only Black person on a team. And, really experiencing the microaggressions and
Hmm.
the people not really seeing your value. And it was a very frustrating experience. And that really pushed me into looking into meditation. And then finally, I got it. I watched a YouTube video that, sort of explained it in a way that it finally clicked. And I got really interested in the topic because there was so much data to support it now. So much data explaining why it works, how
Hmm.
it impacts the brain, how it impacts your emotional regulation, studies showing the impact that meditation and mindfulness have on your compassion, your empathy, everything. And so I just became a nerd about it. Watched all the documentaries and read all the books, and this was 6 months before COVID. So it was almost like I went into like deep training just in time for the world to shut down in 2020. And at that time, I was actually starting to, really thrive in my role. I was
Mhm.
starting to, identify solutions, and I was coming up with ideas where people were like, why didn't we think of this sooner? And so I knew it was working. And my team was also struggling because of COVID. We were managing, call center populations, and just, extremely hectic from an operational perspective. And I said to my manager one day, really, feeling really empowered,
Mhm.
that's what part of what mindfulness gives you is boldness and courage. And I said, I would love to just maybe have a talk, do a talk. I like speaking, I've always liked speaking. Why not? I don't mind, doing a talk and just kind of sharing my story and my father's story. And she's like, please, and I did it and started a community from that. It was like, hey, if anyone else is interested in talking about this stuff and being a nerd with me, join me every third Friday of the month, and we'll get together and powwow on mindfulness. And 5 people showed up. And then, 10, and then, 18 months later, 500 members.
Wow.
And, cross functional teams reaching out to me and saying, hey, I hear you do this mindfulness thing and we have a problem. How can you help us? And so I started to sort of have this process of you tell me a problem and I'll tell you how mindfulness can be a solution to that problem. And so I started developing workshops. And one day it dawned on me that I've serviced over like 5,000 global employees.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
I could maybe do this, outside of these four walls, So that's, 2021, I launched my company, Mindful Culture Creators, to really be an organization that helps other organizations bring mindfulness into their culture,
Mhm.
because it will help you achieve your strategic goals. It will help your people not only be more well, but be more effective, be more focused, be more compassionate, all the things that we say we want and need in this world, and we're paying billions of dollars to train people on. Mindfulness is a solution that can sort of be a brain hack so that people
Mhm.
actually retain the billions of dollars worth of training that you're giving them. They now have the mental environment to retain that information.
So thank you for that, for giving us the background on that. A couple of things that came out of that for me. First of all, I want to commend you for being bold enough to start out and saying, I was not a believer.
Yeah.
This wasn't a thing that I was into my entire life, that I practiced, I approached. But then you talked about how you arrived there. So one, I commend you for doing that. It takes leadership and boldness to do that. But the other thing is, the two worlds seem so different when you talk about robotic process automation, and I'm involved in that as well. And you think about mindfulness, which sounds like it's something that's a little bit more eclectic, hippie kind of thing. Two worlds apart, but yet you were able to bring those together while you were still in that RPA role. So talk a little bit about that, like the left brain, right brain thought of let me be logical with RPA, and then what you do with mindfulness.
Ah, what a great question. No one's ever asked me that question before, and I think that's a great, great question. So there's actually a really interesting and obvious connection between mindfulness and technology. First and foremost, if you think about like sort of the history of mindfulness in Western culture, it started in the Bay Area. Our
Hmm.
big bang of that was in the Bay Area, which is the tech sector. And so one of the things that really I found interesting when I first started learning about mindfulness was the way that other, particularly technology organizations, were embracing it. And again,
Hmm.
this is pre-COVID. So while mindfulness was still sort of having a pop culture moment in modern society with exposure, this is still pre-COVID, right? And so I was reading really interesting articles on Forbes and Inc. magazine, and that were talking about what Salesforce was doing
Hmm.
to bring mindfulness into their organization. I have a deep background in finance as well. Ray Dalio has written tons of books on how mindfulness and meditation are such a big part of his success as one of the largest hedge fund managers in the world. So I immediately saw this really interesting connection between mindfulness and logic. Because
Hmm.
what mindfulness is, really simply, my definition of mindfulness is being in the present moment on purpose with an
Hmm.
attitude of non-judgment. And so when you break it down that way, and you can sort of see it outside of the mystical, esoteric, even spiritual
Right.
way that it is sometimes, sort of described. And I do have that path right now, right? And not so
Hmm.
much before. I totally get it now, the interconnectedness of everything. And I speak that language very well.
Yeah.
Uh, and I can understand, how mindfulness and explaining mindfulness to people, it's the same reason that algorithms work, right? The way the brain works and the programming that we have within our brain. And, mindfulness is sort of the act of shutting down the computer so that so that the programmer can actually go in and change the code,
Oh,
right?
that's a
And
good one.
so,
That's
yeah, so
good.
like,
Yeah.
exactly. And so you have these downtimes in technology to allow for space for change, right? And if you think about how that applies to our natural lives, right?
Mhm.
Having the downtime to actually create and activate change and transformation in your life, that happens in the downtime. And
Yeah.
most of
Yeah.
us are not intentional about that downtime. However, programmers are very intentional about when they shut the program down
Yes, they
to
are.
change the code, right?
Absolutely,
Exactly.
they are. Yeah.
Exactly. So, I feel that if people saw meditation, mindfulness, and even some of these more spiritual conversations using the analogies that resonate with them. So, if you're a technologist, it's really clear, it's a really clear connection on how the two fit together. But maybe technology is not your thing. Maybe you are a numbers person, right? I'm
Mhm.
really into numerology, and it makes sense because I was an accounting major. I actually really, and I really appreciate the exactness of numbers.
Mhm.
And you can use numbers to sort of explain why mindfulness works as well. There's all these different ways to explain the same thing because everything really is the same. And once you understand the patterns, you start to really appreciate, these disciplines for not just this new age, sort of ideology, but
Right.
true presence, right? True presence that, activated Silicon Valley, that activated some of the largest technological advances in modern culture, that was born in the epicenter of Western mindfulness.
Outstanding descriptions. As you were speaking, I could visualize everything like, oh,
Good,
that makes so much sense.
good, good,
I get it. Because
good.
immediately when you say mindfulness, especially to people that are involved in science or data or something like that, they're thinking of floating on clouds, something a
Right.
little weird, right? Do we have to
Yep.
light incense? Those kind of things. But I love the way you just broke that down. And my mind operates in a logical format. So that makes sense to me. So
Yeah.
appreciate that. So my next question is for you. So you've been in corporate leadership in multiple positions. You've already talked a little bit about that. What did you learn during those corporate experiences, both good and bad, that you've taken with you in your mindful leadership efforts?
Oh my God, so much. So much. You know, uh, First and foremost, in my corporate leadership experience, I have had the pleasure of, reporting to a number of managers.
Mhm.
But I had the pleasure of working with just one of the best managers of my career. He recently passed away, and when he hired me, the very first thing that he told me was he recognized that I was a different type of leader,
Mhm.
and he really gave me space, explicit space to be the brand of leadership that I am, which is visionary. Like I am a very as logical and as tactical as I can be. I thrive when I can develop a vision and have others execute on my vision, right? And so he really helped me understand that that's the environment that I work best in. And
Mhm.
so, you have to sort of, in order to really appreciate that leadership style, it takes a lot of courage. It takes a lot of confidence. It takes a lot of executing through others and influencing others. And in the role that I was struggling in with the technology role, part of the reason that I was struggling, and I can say this now, I couldn't see it at the time, was
Mhm.
because I was not being that visionary leader. I was trying to do the work. I was hesitant to delegate because I still had these sort of outdated belief systems that said
Right.
I needed to do all the work, that I needed to prove myself, that, and yes, the structure that I was in, the team was not set up, for me to succeed. And I certainly could have used greater support and greater leadership. However, right,
Mhm.
it's up to me to see the problem, see the cracks, and apply the solution. And I was not mindful in that moment, so I could not see the cracks. And so the what I'll say, to kind of wrap that up is, mindfulness is a tool that can really give you the ability to not only see your flaws, but see them without judgment so
Mhm.
that you can actually change them. And that has been the biggest, sort of benefit, especially now that I'm on this owner's journey, right? Of really starting a business by myself. So again, I don't have a team, right? I don't
Right.
have the
Right.
structure to, execute it the way that I would like to. However, it's giving me space to make mistakes. and to, really just get ugly with, how I feel and the anxiety and the pressure and the imposter syndrome, not feel like I have to be perfect.
Yeah.
And then change my thought. Allow the space, allow the room
Hmm.
for the aha moments, and then actually apply action to that. And I feel like in the last 2 months, with really being intentional about that, I wrote some of my accomplishments down the other night. I've accomplished more in two months than I sometimes have accomplished in a year.
Yeah.
And I credit that so much with, really being disciplined about my mindfulness practice. I practice every day. I do qigong, I do seated practice, and it's now a part of my lifestyle. So I don't have to have
Mhm.
as much formal practice. But because I have incorporated that into my lifestyle, I'm just much more effective, and I can handle the bumps, the bruises, the ugly with
Yeah.
just more grace, ease, and efficiency, if that makes any sense.
No, it does make sense, and I'm picturing people that are listening to this right now, like, oh my gosh, I want to get to where she is, in life. It sounds like she has it figured out. This is working. But I like the fact that you keep bringing up the word ugly. Ugliness, the imposter syndrome. That's still going to happen. It still occurs, which is why the whole mindful journey is so important and understanding that. So Shantae, so when it's all said and done, what is the desired outcome of your leadership impact that you are attempting to accomplish with this?
The real outcome is to help people see the value of stillness. I
Hmm.
think we're in a society right now and that's why, part of my mission is really like ending world distraction. I really envision, having like the statistics saying, world distraction, I want to reduce it by, 60%. We're so inundated with information and
Yes.
tools and technology and
Yes.
people. And, we have literally everything at our fingertips. And I'm not sure that our friends in Silicon Valley really considered the risk of all of the abundance that we now
Hmm.
have at our fingertips. So it really behooves us. And I like using risk management as an analogy to explain this. The environment is not going to change, right? It's sort of static.
Hmm.
It behooves us to develop risk management strategies that allow us to be present, because it is that presence that will help us get through that, to navigate that, to actually, something as simple as having the courage or the freedom, rather, to actually
Hmm.
put your phone in another room while you work so that you can focus for an hour, right? But we will have anxiety about that because we're afraid we're going to miss a call. We're afraid we're going to miss this. We're afraid that, or literally the literal feeling of anxiety
Hmm.
when you're just having when you don't have access to something that you're addicted to, right? Because that's what we're
Yep.
talking about here. The courage and the resilience and the strength to be able to just put your phone in another room, and the productivity that could unlock, right? But it takes a certain amount of presence to activate that. And so really the mark that I want to leave, really is to increase people's awareness through mindfulness and meditation, so that they're just more effective at doing life the way that they want to do it.
It's a great desired outcome. I thought you were going to
Yeah.
go another direction with that answer, but that's a great desired outcome.
Yeah.
Understanding the value of stillness, which I'm going to be completely honest with you, I'm not there yet.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
I'm one of those guys I'm always doing. And if I'm
Yep.
not doing, my mind is always running,
Yep.
that thought process and, productivity. But I love where you're going with that.
And
So
can I
another,
can I can I say one thing
yeah,
about that?
absolutely. Absolutely.
The interesting thing, and I do a lot of work in male spaces as well. I've done work
Hmm.
in fraternity spaces and in other spaces that are primarily male, and I hear that a lot, right? I think there is this sort of stereotype of mindfulness and stillness and meditation as being a tool that is feminine, or is not, or just you just don't see the value.
Right.
There's a lot of stereotypes around these terms, period, across a multitude of communities. What I like to tell people is that this is no different from a world class athlete,
Hmm.
right? A world class athlete sort of really prioritizing their mind because they know that it's going to benefit them in the game, right? And there's so many sports analogies that I could use to explain the value of stillness. But the thing that I'll leave you with is sometimes, like you said, your mind is racing and you want to get to the next thing and multitask. Sometimes just practice sitting with that. It's
Hmm.
a challenge. And I feel like men can appreciate the need and value of a challenge, right? So if you see this as a challenge, that you set a timer, it's not something
Yeah.
that you have to, really, go for a walk in nature and change your lifestyle and do yoga. It's not that. Sometimes it's literally just a challenge. I'm going to set a timer for 5 minutes, and I'm just going to sit here and I'm
Mhm.
going to see what comes up. And I'm going to see how I feel on the other side of that. And when you challenge yourself to do that once, you typically find that you find value. You'll find the
Mhm.
value, you'll see it, and then you're neurologically you'll want to do it again.
I like it. Good coaching already. I just
There
got free coaching, I might
you go.
you can see you can send me an invoice later. All right.
There you go.
So here we go. So as a black woman in an emerging market of mindfulness health and personal awareness, as you just talked about, what challenges have you faced to get others to buy into your leadership ability? Not your ability in understanding the practice, but
Mhm.
your leadership ability in this.
Yeah, this is a really interesting space because it is in Western culture. Mindfulness is a very white. It has a white face to it right now,
Hmm.
and what that will often imply or sort of mean is that practitioners in the space are very academic. A
Hmm.
lot of folks in this space they come from either academia, spiritual paths, and clinical paths. And so being a leader in this space means that I really have to embrace my authenticity. That's the biggest sort of leadership lesson that I've learned when I succeed
Hmm.
at selling my brand of mindfulness, which is very different. There are not very many people that talk about mindfulness the way I do from a business perspective. I also, being a Black woman from Detroit, Michigan, a lot of my practices include my culture. It includes hip hop music, it includes jazz, it includes things that resonate with people that are sort of underserved in this community, and in a brand of mindfulness that sort of looks one way. I try to help people understand how mindfulness is literally everything. And so sometimes there's challenge with that, and sometimes I have to just really accept that my brand is not for everybody, right?
Right.
And really be okay that sort of utilizing the 1,000 fans sort of ideology. I don't know if you're familiar with that, but this
I
sort
am
of
not.
ideology that we don't necessarily need a million fans or a million
Mhm.
customers. Sometimes, especially at the beginning, you only need 1,000 core followers, fans, customers, whatever it is, and they will help. They will be your influencers, and they will help you grow that fan base. So really understanding that right now, I'm just trying to attract the people that are attracted to my brand. I'm really clear on my why.
Mhm.
I have a really solid understanding of why I'm doing this, and I'm okay if others that choose to teach and sort of promote mindfulness in a very academic way, they may think that my methods are not valid. Right,
Mhm.
and I've sort of had interesting conversations with thought leaders in the space where we disagree and we bump heads, and we allow room for that. We allow room for that disagreement, and I know that there are, that my brand is necessary
Mhm.
because I get the feedback. I'm hearing from people that are being impacted. I'm hearing from people that are changing their habits, that especially men, men that are telling me that they are now finding their form of mindfulness, and or they're understanding how they are already mindful, and so they're giving themselves neurological credit for the ways that they're already practicing mindfulness. So now they're not saying, I'm not mindful, I don't meditate. Oh, I do. It's through my fitness, it's through my
Mhm.
puzzles, it's through my anything that I do to create focus and get into flow. That is my mindfulness practice. So I know my brand is working. I focus on being my authentic self, bringing my authentic voice to this space, and really just leading with confidence, because oftentimes as a Black woman, we do struggle with imposter syndrome, and we will allow our voices and allow ourselves to shrink into
Mhm.
the background. I have certainly done that in my career, and it's never served me. It's never served me. It was not until I started to really be bold, be as loud and sometimes abrasive, and be willing to like kind of be a bull in a china shop every now and then. When I really embraced that is who I am, and I'm from Detroit. It's kind of like it's sort of like what we do. Once I really started embracing that, coupled with my skill set, coupled with my calm demeanor, everything just sort of unlocked, and now challenges just sort of resolve themselves really effortlessly.
Great answer. Couple things. One, you mentioned hip hop. You got a little Tribe Called Quest thrown up in there.
Oh my
Like,
God, are you kidding me?
a little
Like,
tribe, a little
yeah.
comment. What are you playing?
Oh my
What's
God, a
working?
Tribe Called Quest. So here's a tip, to anyone that is, looking for ways to get into flow. Which flow is the state of mind where when you're locked in, when you're focused, and really free from distraction, able to execute at a high level. So one of the techniques to get into flow is to actually listen to certain types of music, particularly music that is repetitive
Hmm.
and that is free from lyrics, that is only instrumental, and something you don't have to like change anything. You're not going to get interrupted by commercials or anything like that. So YouTube is a really amazing place where you can find instrumentals where the content creator has created sort of a 1 hour or 2 hour loop of that instrumental. And one of my favorite tracks to play not only in practice but as I work and get into flow is electric relaxation.
Yep.
Yeah, it's
That's
electric
exactly what I was
relaxation.
thinking about.
Yep, yep. And it starts with the sample, which is a Ronnie Foster song that is an amazing jazz tune that I also use in practice to guide people through mindfulness and meditation using that song. But the track, it's like an hour and a half long, and it loops. It's a very mellow sort of vibration, so it allows me to really lock in and get focused. And I know, and then it's sort of a timer, so I know after when it ends, I can congratulate myself for being focused for an hour plus, right? And so
Wow.
that's a tip, and there's lots of a Tribe Called Quest is my go-to for those tracks. Lyrics to Go is another one
Hmm.
that's like an hour and a half, and you just put it on, and I really get creative. I execute some of my best work listening to hip hop instrumentals.
It's amazing. You and I didn't even discuss that,
Yeah,
and we're aligned on that.
there we go.
That's pretty cool. And then I did want to mention one other thing. You were talking about, being a black woman and, being that bull in the china shop sometimes where you have to be bold. And it reminded me of a book. I'm gonna just throw a plug out there, but there's a new book out. I don't know if you've seen it, but it's called I'm Not Yelling. You can find it on Amazon and all kinds of places. But I follow the author on LinkedIn, and she writes about being a black woman, and when you're speaking, you're not yelling, but sometimes it's perceived as that when you're being assertive. But
Yeah.
I think that might be just a good route to read into that. But another great answer. So I'm going to change gears just slightly. From the mindfulness, but I know you're also passionate about diversity, equity, and inclusion. Um, so, what knowledge and tactics can you add to corporations who may desire to actualize their DEI aspirations but may not know where to begin to make it a reality?
You know, DE&I is an interesting topic because it's fairly new, right? And so the
Mhm.
number one thing that I would tell people that are really working intimately in DE&I spaces and are really passionate, right? This is work that people do because they're passionate about it. They
Mhm.
really want to see change in the workplace. They really want social justice to be at the forefront of conversations where within organizations. And sometimes it's hard. We can lose sight of the fact that for some of these programs, they literally were just created post George Floyd. And so
True.
even the programs that were created prior to that, we all have to allow, grace for ourselves and for the organizations to really understand, and those that are resistant.
Mhm.
Like there are a lot of people that still don't understand DE&I and or buy into it, right? And I like to neutralize things, right? And I am a social justice warrior. I was raised by parents that were sort of pan-African and sort of
Mhm.
their ideology. And so I, totally get the importance of, resistance. And I appreciate the, sort of the value of neutralizing these topics, because what you have is a population of people that just they don't see the value,
Mhm.
right? And in every organization, that's something that an organization is going to struggle with. There are going to be people that don't get the value, and you have a couple choices. You can either say, this is what we're doing, and those that don't want to get on the value bus, this is, they can exit, or you can figure out a way to influence them, right? And so part of that is, that influence. And I think I mentioned this earlier, being an effective influencer.
Mhm.
because that's the job of a DE&I, of a DEI team. They need to be influencing. So something that organizations can be investing in for their DE&I staff is training them on how to be better influencers,
Right.
not just training them on how to talk about social justice and how to talk about race and how to deal, because a lot of times these teams, they get into a real sort of tactical reactionary
Mhm.
scenario, because everyone's coming to them with their DE&I challenges, right?
Right.
Everyone
Right.
thinks their problem is a diversity problem or equity problem or this problem, and sometimes they're just management problems. Sometimes they're just leadership problems. Sometimes they're
Yes.
HR problems, right? So it takes a certain level of courage to be able to redirect people to the right place, number one, but also to remain focused on the fact that my job is to influence, and so I
Mhm.
need to be focused on influencing. And if my team is not investing in me being an effective influencer, being an effective storyteller, right? Another big part of DE&I is being able to tell stories. Then it's up to the DE&I person to ask for that training, ask for
Mhm.
that guidance, ask for that exposure, because influencing is a buzzword right now, right? There's so many different ways, that creative ways, that you can invest in your team's ability to be more effective at influencing. And so I think that if we started breaking down these hot topics in more neutral ways, we would see the cracks, see the problems, and then really see very apparent solutions to very solvable problems.
Great answer. I think you're the first person that has ever started with providing grace to
Mm,
organizations and thinking through D&I. Like, I don't think I've ever heard that before. I was thinking back through the conversations I've
yeah,
had and the interviews I've conducted, and people don't normally start out with that. But you're right. It's fairly new, although the issues aren't new.
right.
DEI in a structured format in corporations with new C-suite level executives, and that's their mission. It's fairly new, so that's a good thought, in that we should provide grace. And then the other piece, the influencer. Although I knew that, like I've never said that out loud before.
Yeah.
I think that's a huge point you just made, and the coaching of the teams that are formulated, and a lot of times we just pick people because they're color, and so they
Right.
have experiences that they can share, but sharing the experiences don't necessarily influence people to think about business differently. So that's another great point that you just made.
Yeah, and I wanna touch on what you said with new. I remember I listened to a live with civil rights activist Angela Davis, and she
Hmm.
made a really good point. This conversation was around social justice, social change, and she made a really good point. From the perspective that revolutions take time by definition. Like a
Hmm.
revolution is a long process, right? And
Right.
we are seeing a revolution in work, right? In a lot of different areas, DE&I being one of them. And so while, we may, really be inside of the issues, right? And to your point, the problems are not new, right?
Hmm.
And the issues and the fact that people should know certain things that they don't know. Yes, all of those things exist. And the revolution of, changing organizations, it takes time.
Right.
And if we don't have a proper, and I love the way she put that, really giving ourselves grace in this moment of social change, because this was at the time of the George Floyd unrest. She really sort of calmed the audience down with helping them understand that even from a perspective level, the civil rights movement is not that old. Right. We have
Mhm.
not been fighting
No,
for
it's
civil
not.
rights for that long in this country. Revolutions take time. We have to really show grace for the process, honor the process, and do the work. Roll up our sleeves, do the work. And if people are not giving you and setting you up for success, and believe me, I've been there before. I've been on teams where I was not set up for success. I
Mhm.
didn't start winning in those roles until I started setting myself up for success. And you do that by being strategic. And you do
Mhm.
that by looking at the problems and looking for solutions to problems, as opposed to getting lost in your emotion. And again, shameless plug for mindfulness. That's why mindfulness is important. Every DE&I team should have like a mindfulness consultant, someone to help regulate the emotion that comes up when faced with these really tough problems, that other groups don't have to deal with these type of problems, right?
Right.
So mindfulness could be a really good tool to activate DE&I. And I actually have a program that I'm going to be launching soon that really connects mindfulness and DE&I and social justice in this really interesting way to help support these organizations and these leaders that are doing really important work, help them develop the resilience, the courage, the boldness, and the influencing capabilities to really execute and activate these programs because they are important to our change in these organizations.
Excellent, excellent, excellent commentary. So I'm going to jump into my last question. It's a little bit different than the other questions. It's my bonus question. It's my staple question I ask every single guest that comes onto this show. So, Shawnta Hooks, in the year of 2023, and the culture in which we're in, and thinking about leadership, what one or two things pisses you off that you wish that you could change?
Oh man, one or two things that piss me off in leadership, generally speaking.
Leadership or the culture of they were leading in, whatever.
Yeah, the thing that really makes me upset is that people say they want authenticity, but they really don't. Right? I think that authenticity is sort of a buzzword right now. And I think that it sounds good to say, as an organization, we value authenticity, or as a leader,
Mhm.
I value authenticity. Yet the moment that someone is authentic and it makes us uncomfortable,
Yeah, yeah.
then it's an issue. Because what people really mean oftentimes is not that they value authenticity that makes them comfortable, that they're comfortable with. And so, again, the reason that I love this work is because mindfulness is a tool that can really help you be comfortable being uncomfortable. Right.
Mhm,
That's where the joy of life is when we get comfortable in our discomfort, when we can actually be willing to take risks and be willing to actually hear another person and be willing to actually sit with ourselves and our negative emotions and sometimes just sit in nature and feel like, so that's uncomfortable for many people. Like just
mhm,
sitting in nature is uncomfortable. And so, when we really challenge ourselves in a practice environment to be comfortable being uncomfortable, you can take that into the real world. And suddenly when someone is being their authentic self in a brand that you're not necessarily used to, you're not throwing passive aggressive attacks
yeah,
and
yeah.
saying things behind the things that people do in corporate spaces.
Mhm.
I've never been, in my entire 20-year career, I've never been good at like playing the game.
Yep.
Like I've just never, it's never been, I've never been on the in crowd, so to
Yeah.
speak. I've never been the one, like I've always proven my value and, showed up to the party. I go to the happy hours and do all those things. But I have always, one thing about me, and I credit this, with being from Detroit, Michigan, I've
Mhm,
always embraced authenticity in a way that, others sometimes don't. And so I just really encourage people, to really think about that, to really
mhm,
think about, when you say you want authenticity in the
mhm,
workplace or even in your personal life, right? This comes up, in relationships with our significant others, right? We say we
mhm.
want a person to be who they are, yet then the person that the moment that they are the who they are, and we don't like it, now it's a fight, it's a this,
Yep,
it's a
now we
that,
have
right?
problems.
And
Now we
now we
have
have
issues. Now we
problems,
got to go
right?
to marriage counseling. Damn it, I
Right.
hate marriage counseling.
Exactly. And it's like I think if we really understood how to embrace and accept others for who they are, because that's
Mhm,
what it is. The other side of authenticity is acceptance. And when we start to really accept others and things as they are, as opposed to how we want them to be,
mhm,
then we will have cultures that are truly inclusive, that truly embrace belonging. Diversity is no longer an issue because we understand and see the apparent diversity and the value of diversity. This is there. It shouldn't be that hard to understand why diversity is profitable, right? But we choose to not see it because of our subconscious belief systems. And the minute we start breaking that stuff down and embracing authenticity and acceptance, particularly through mindfulness and meditation, this world will literally change.
Love that answer. And you and I are so aligned. We did not practice this. I want to tell everyone that's listening, we did not rehearse this, but you actually just spoke the newsletter that I'm getting ready to release this weekend. So it's called About Last Night. I'll just go ahead and let you know. So
Okay.
everyone, have a newsletter on LinkedIn called My Great Aunt EDNA, but the About Last Night is very similar to what you just said
Wow.
about
Can't wait
being
to read.
authentic. And yes, it pisses people off. One because they ask for it, but when they get it, That's not fair,
Right, right,
right? But also on the flip side, it pisses people off that feel that they can't be authentic at
right,
work. Yeah.
right,
So
right.
yeah, I love your response. And no, we didn't practice that, everyone.
And that last part is so important, when it comes to, especially being a Black person in the workspace. I can only speak to my own experience. I know that there have been times where I held back because I just didn't think that my brand of Blackness, of authenticity, would be
Mhm.
welcomed and acceptance. No one told me that. Right. No one, I hadn't really been offended yet. Sure, maybe I heard some things that, may have differed from my opinion or my political beliefs and things like that. But, did anyone actually, if I think back, with real clarity, was anyone telling me that I could not, wear my hair this way? Or,
Mhm.
at the time, I'm not talking about the, even the 80s. And I, grew up in corporate America in the 2000s and the
Mhm.
2010s and the 2020s, right? Where there was a shift, right? And so anytime that I chose to wear my hair a certain way, and I live in Atlanta, right? So I've
Mhm.
always been a part of diverse teams. I still chose to be more quote unquote conservative because I just thought that that was the way I needed to do it. Right? That's
Mhm.
a me problem. Right? That's a me issue.
Not
That's
necessarily.
me.
Not
Well,
necessarily.
to an extent, to an
Yeah.
extent, I'm saying from
Yeah.
my personal experience,
Yeah.
and I only use that as an example because everybody has their own experience. But
Mhm.
I'm sure we can all think of at least one example where our choice
Yes.
to
Yes.
not be authentic
Yes.
was a me thing, right?
Yes.
And even with the system being set up, I always say this, you can still choose to be your brand of authentic and risk, right? Take the risk, right? The risk of not being promoted, of not being liked, of being
Ooh, I
fired.
love this discussion.
You could take that risk,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. I love this discussion. I
We'll have to do a
promise you
part
it's
two.
so aligned with what I just wrote. I love it. All right. So gonna get ready to wrap this episode up. It's been a great discussion. And I've been very thankful to have you as a guest on the My Great Aunt Edna show. But before we go, I want to turn it back over to you. Again, just give us some last words of wisdom. You're full of wisdom. I mean, it's just coming out of your pores, or anything that you're currently working on that you want the watchers and listeners to know about.
Yeah, I have a program, a mindfulness learning program, and my signature program is actually called Honor the Pause. And so that's what I'll leave you with. Honor the pause in life and in work. I always say between a thought and an action is a pause. And when we honor that pause, we allow space for our action to perhaps be different, to make choices that really are in alignment with our authenticity, our brave and courageous authenticity.
Mhm.
But you have to honor that pause. And so if you're looking for, people to support you on your journey as an individual or as an organization, please reach out to me. You can find me on LinkedIn, Shawnta
Mhm.
Hooks, as well as on Instagram, Shawnta the Speaker. And I do this because I'm passionate about it. I give keynotes and I teach mindfulness in ways that are culturally relevant. And even when I say culturally relevant, I mean culturally in terms of what it is that you do. If you're a technology team, then I can teach you and your teams how to be more mindful using analogies that resonate with your culture as a technology team. If you are a men's group, a faith-based group, if you are a DE&I group, really passionate about DE&I and activating the leaders within that organization, I can certainly be of service to really just help you not just be well, because I think sometimes
Mhm.
mindfulness gets lumped into this wellness bucket and it gets lost, that it's more than wellness. This is mental fitness. This is mental fitness in
I
a way
like
that
that.
we're, yeah, and it's in a way that we're not currently tapping in. Think about this. I'll leave your listeners with this. Roughly 98% of Americans brush their teeth every day. And we did not always brush our teeth. We did not
I know.
always buy into the idea of brushing teeth until
Yeah.
science and studies and really smart people said this is what we should do to protect our hygiene. And mindfulness is in that sort of same wave. Only about 14% of Americans have even tried meditation. And so that means that fewer are actually practicing it on a consistent basis. And it's so important to our health, our mental health, our physical health, our spiritual health, our professional health, that I am excited to see that we're on the brink of going from 14% of people that have tried it to perhaps 98% of people that are doing it every single day. And I'm one of those people that can be someone that can help, get us there. So that's why I do this.
Outstanding. So I love that. And everyone, do not hit stop yet because we're going to put Shantae's information up on the screen for those of you that are watching in YouTube, so you can reach out to her. Absolute great speaker, a leader in mindfulness, a coach, as she just talked about. Corporations can truly benefit. I love the fact that what you're doing with DE&I and tying that into mindfulness as well. You guys, make sure you reach out to her. And continue to watch the show. I appreciate everyone joining. Hit the like and subscribe button if you're watching on YouTube to get updates with other great leaders from all around the world who will be sharing some leadership nuggets for you all. So with that, I say thank you. May your week be excellent, and God bless. Thank you for watching today's show. And as I promised, you would hear from a dynamic leader named Shawnta Hooks. Shantae's information is up on the screen right now. Reach out to her and find out how she can help you personally or your organization in their journey of mindfulness excellence. And also, I'd like to remind you that my book is available right now wherever books are sold, so please get your copy. And lastly, subscribe to this channel so that you can hear from other great leaders from all around the world and how they can help you in your own leadership journey. And with that, I say thank you. May your week be excellent, and God bless.